So I wanted to come on here and do a video that I feel needs to be said, has been needing to be said for a long time. Now, for a lot of people who are close to this channel will know that we work very closely in tandem with Jason Unruhe and his former Maoist Rebel News Network, and how just in the general nature in which we all operate pretty succinctly, pretty parallel to each other. Now, what a lot of people don't seem to understand is that Jason and I go quite a ways back. I'm probably one of his oldest friends. And that's because I've been essentially watching Jason as far back as like 2009, 2010, something like that. And a lot of people, for whatever fucking reason or another, typically a bunch of LARPy leftists who claim to be anarchists and, you know, to whatever type of bullshit that they want to label themselves as, libertarian socialists, you know, people that typically don't seem to understand that what we advocate here is that it's not that we are advocating against intersectionality itself. We advocate for dialecticalism, dialectics. And see, the issue is that a lot of people seem to believe that Jason is some sort of phobe of some kind, either a homophobe or a transphobe or both, despite the fact that he is literally a bisexual man himself, and I am myself a queer trans woman. People still like to call us transphobic because, A, I defend him because I agree with a lot of his stances. And the reason why I agree with a lot of his stances is because we aren't saying that intersectionality itself, we're not arguing against it. What we are saying is that there is intersectionality only can go so far under capitalism. You can only achieve certain concessions from the ruling class under capitalism. There comes a point where you can't truly get to equality or liberation under capitalism. That's where dialectics teaches us that we can, and how we can achieve that. Because once you have achieved the revolution, have achieved getting rid of the problems that prevent liberation, that prevent equality, such as gender equality, things like gender, which includes things like gender identity struggle, queer, struggle, all of that. That all will fall into play after the revolution has been achieved. And a lot of people want to say, oh, so we have to achieve the cis man's revolution first. It's not about the cis man's revolution. It's not about any of that. It has nothing to do with cis people or men at all. It has to do with dialectics. It has to deal with the idea that you have to achieve the means of getting rid of the oppressor class, the exploitation. You have to get rid of those elements. You have to seize the means of production for us so that we can liberate ourselves. It has nothing to do with a cis man leading it, because literally it could be a trans woman that leads it. But the issue is the same. You still have to achieve the goal of getting rid of capitalism, and then everything will fall into place. That's what we mean. It has nothing to do with being, transphobic or trans exclusionary or anything like that. It has nothing to do with being exclusionary towards queer people. It is just saying that under intersectionality, which is an inherent liberal thing, you can only achieve so much under capitalism. So fundamentally, you don't actually achieve the goals that you're trying to do, which is equality and liberation. You can only get that under socialism. So that's kind of the thing that I get frustrated with a lot of queer and trans people, because I myself, as a queer trans woman, face that all the time. And I'm basically like, oh, well, then you don't actually support queer liberation or trans liberation, then do you? No, I do. I want that. Okay, then do revolution. Well, why should we have to do that? Do you not want queer liberation, trans liberation? And then it's just a revolving, it's just going around in circles. It becomes a Benny Hill skit, and it's just, it gets exhausting going around in the same circle with people who very obviously don't want to do the work. They don't want to do revolution, because at the end of the day, they don't want to give up their comforts. They don't want to give up that first world privilege. And I think it goes without saying, because this is kind of a problem like it is anywhere else, but it is also a major problem in the queer and trans community, because like everything else, a lot of the majority of those people are white, and they deal with issues of whiteness and not being able to, get over that. So that's one of the big problems that I kind of have with that. So this led me into doing something that I did within the last couple of days, in which I finally looked back on my journey and my journey into Marxism-Leninism, and then Marxism-Leninism, Maoism, Maoist third worldism, and essentially like how I've kind of grown because of Jason and because of a lot of the things that he taught me, and frankly, to a lot of the stuff that I agree with him with. Now, let me just start again by saying that I first came across Jason's videos back in about 2009, 2010. I think I was in about my senior year of high school. And now at this time, I was going through one of what would become various transitions in my life. And this one being my political one. This one, of course, would take many years and would go along with my many other transitions. Now, as a male at the time presenting lonely teenager, I was still very white-coated. I was still very ignorant. Quite a bit of a shithead, I will admit. Now, I'm not sure what the lingo is now, but we used to call them edgelords. I don't know what the cool cats, Gen Z and Gen Alpha are saying now, but that's what we used to call it. And I'm probably dating myself with my own lingo. Forgive me, I'm getting old. This was essentially, though, what I was online, and maybe to some degree, I think I would even argue still am. Some things never change. On September 4th of 2009, my 18th birthday, I remember it very specifically. I remember going to the California state identification, going and getting my California state identification from DMV in Napa. I was really excited because it meant that I could now vote. I was really kind of sour because like Barack Obama had just been elected previously, and I had wished that I could have voted for him at that time. Obviously, looking back now, looking back at my old self, I'm like, you stupid fucking liberal. But yeah, but I was very excited about that. And I remember proudly registering as a Democrat. Now, at the time, I was starting to watch Jason's videos under what was now the Maoist Rebel News 2 channel, because I believe that he had to start over because his account got nuked. Now, because even back then, YouTube was still very hostile towards leftist media content, and it's, as time's progressed, it's only gotten worse. But as time went on, the illusion of Obama obviously began to wear off. I found myself becoming more and more disillusioned, and there was kind of two paths that I literally could go. I literally could have gone down the fascist pipeline that a lot of white, insecure males would have been at the time would have gone. And and that would have probably led me into a whole other, situation, a whole other timeline of things. But I was thankful. I came across somebody like Jason Unruhe a few years back, and I'd been watching him, from here and there, kind of listening to some of the things that he would say. And one of the things that I became really hopeful for was, especially for a lot of us millennials, was the whole Occupy Wall Street movement that came around about 2011, 2012. But as that became more apparent that was going to be more of a nothing burger, and was just very performative, I became even more jaded. I became disappointed. I became depressed, more disillusioned, just angry. So once again, I could have gone down that fascist pipeline, or I could stick my head in a book and actually educate myself. And so I did. I started reading about these guys named Marx and Lenin, that Jason was talking about, and it changed my perspective. So I would say by about mid to late 2012 was when I would start referring to myself probably as a socialist and as a Marxist-Leninist. And as time wore on, I became more and more versed in theory and praxis. I began to start having some Maoist tendencies. Now, let me be clear, I was still a bit of a first worldist, so I had not yet given up my illusion that America, I hadn't given up the illusion of America being saved. I still thought that there was a future for America. I had not yet given up my Americanism, my whiteness, my first world privilege myself. One of the things being is that I was still very enamored with Bernie Sanders and was very hopeful about what that could symbolize for our country. And to some extent, looking back, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just, because he really was probably the last hope to save a dying empire, so to speak. I still hold that to be true. But as far as what about actually changing things for the better, having a great socialist revolution, no, that wasn't going to happen, obviously. So I actually voted for him in the 2016 primary. And then, of course, the Clintonist Democrats performed that very shameful, but let's be honest, it was a shameful coup, but no one saw it. Everybody saw it coming. It's not like they were going to ever allow that to happen. And so they stifled Sanders, and that led to the factional split in the Democratic Party that we still see today. But I no longer by that point had any faith. My faith in American politics, everything, immediately shattered. I no longer had any faith in it. So that essentially solidified my path down the final stretches of radicalization. It was also during this time that I also started to go through a major life change, a major struggle in my life personally, as I was starting to get into that time into a marriage, or into a relationship that would evolve into an abusive marriage. And I began during those last couple of years to start to struggle with my identity as a person a lot. This was about the time that I started going absent from YouTube because my ex-wife kept me isolated from something that I was very passionate about. And I just became more and more depressed. And she alienated me from my family and friends, and even more from my political associations. And so it wasn't until 2021 that I would be free of this person forever and be free to pursue those passions again. Now, during this time that I was in that abusive relationship, Jason Unruhe was dealing with the constant baseless attacks from certain individuals, most notably against Zoe Baker, aka Anarcho-Pac, who accused Jason of being both a homophobe and a transphobe, yet never really could provide any physical evidence to back those claims. All she had to go off of was some comments taken out of context, and perhaps also like his arguments when it came down to intersectionality versus dialectics. You know, she basically, let me just be clear about something. I've known Jason again since 2009. I'm one of his oldest friends, and he has probably been about one of my oldest friends as well. He's also been a mentor. He's the reason why I even know what Marxism-Leninism, what Maoism, Third Worldism, what communism even was. He wasn't the inspiration for me to start my own political content. So let me be clear. Without Jason Unruhe, RedPaganNetwork does not exist. If I never found a Jason Unruhe video, this channel doesn't exist. What I do doesn't exist. So that being said, like me, Jason is part of the queer community. I owe a lot to Jason. He is like me, he's part of the queer community. He's bisexual. I myself, I came out in 2015 as pansexual, which is under the bi umbrella. So here's what I have to say to a lot of his skeptics, to a lot of the people that call him a transphobe and a homophobe. How can someone be homophobic when they themselves are part of the queer community? I mean, I know that it happens, but like realistically, how can somebody be that way? Like logistically be that way? So in 2019, I finally came to terms with my own identity and who I was as a person, and I finally came out as a transgender woman. This would finally be made public on my return to YouTube on December 7th, 2021. During this interim period, I was still active to some degree online on social media, particularly Twitter. I was aware of a lot of the slanderous accusations that were being slung over the years by garbage people like Zoe Baker and her army of misinformed and brainless fanboys and fangirls. I specifically remember in the winter and spring of, I believe it was 2021, where I was engaging with these individuals on Twitter who were accusing him of transphobia, accusations which again started well over a decade ago, and that still continue to this day. Let me be absolutely clear about this. Jason Unruhe is not transphobic. He never was. And even if he was, I would not be associated with him or the various other people that are around him. Jason has many trans people other than myself, many non-binary people who follow him. And I highly doubt that any of them would still be around with him if they thought that he was transphobic or homophobic. While there are takes that Jason may have had years ago that may have come off a certain way or may have aged poorly, there's nothing that he has said specifically that you can definitively call homophobic or transphobic. You just simply can't. Jason has gone to great measures to engage with the queer and trans community over the years. In fact, he regularly asks me for advice on trans-related issues or stories, and has even had me, speak on those topics, beforehand, before he actually goes and says anything himself, if he says anything at all. If Jason is very respectful of the trans community, and I can personally vouch for him as a queer trans woman. He is an ally of the queer and trans community, and anybody who says otherwise clearly doesn't know who he is as a person, or is just wants to fucking start a bunch of fucking drama. They are simply going off of baseless assertions and false accusation based on certain comments that he has, and certain takes that he has made over 10 years ago, that people have taken out of context and continue to take his current stances today. This is just simply not the case. Even if those were his stances back then, that does not necessarily reflect the stances of Jason Unruhe of today. You do realize people's opinions can change, especially when presented with new information, right? And his stances have changed as he's presented with new information, as he's talked to other people, especially in the queer and trans community. So yeah, the Jason Unruhe of today is a man who takes great pride in his work, but also takes great pride, care, and sensitivity to the communities, the topics, and the issues that he covers, and he goes to great lengths to talk to actual individuals in those communities. Over the years, he has built a network of cadres in the Marxist-Leninist Maoist, Maoist Third Worldist, anarchist, anarcho-communist, the demarchists, the Jewish Bundists, and the Black and Indigenous communities. Some of these individuals, especially in groups such as the Commune of Anarchy, are literally trans and queer themselves. And if Jason Unruhe was the transphobic and homophobic monster that these terminally online pseudo-leftists claim that he is, why would these individuals support Jason? They wouldn't. And the reason why they do is because he's not a transphobe or a homophobe. Like, are these anarcho-pack stands just going to write them all off as being transphobic and homophobic themselves, like they did to me when I confronted them in 2021? Yeah, that actually happened. I actually got called transphobic as a queer trans woman for not agreeing with these terminally online shitheads who called Jason a homophobe and a transphobe. Again, even though I'm a queer trans woman, because the queer trans woman bad and transphobic because she doesn't agree with our baseless fucking lies. Okay. So yeah, despite the fact, that I actually know Jason, whereas these little fucking liberal shitheads, who worship a LARPy leftist, aka anarcho-pack, aka Zoe Baker, yeah, they don't know a damn thing about Jason. They don't know anything about him or who he is as a person, other than what that others have said about him online, or what Zoe Baker, the lefty faker, has said. And yes, I call her a fucking fake leftist because Zoe Baker is a fucking garbage individual who does not represent the trans community. Like, she is another one of those people who I'm not saying is not part of the trans community. She is, but she is not the only representative of the trans community. And I frankly refuse to see her as a representative of the trans community, because she feeds toxic misinformation to a bunch of impressionable young people. And quite frankly, she's she's a fake leftist and for the most part doesn't know what the fuck she's talking about. So yeah, I dare these people to challenge and criticize me. I dare them to challenge and criticize the trans and queer people in the indigenous and black communities who respect Jason Unruhe. I dare these people to try and say that these people are racist, homophobic, or transphobic for defending Jason Unruhe. I dare them to challenge and criticize Luke Dublin, an Irish diaspora living in England who is an Irish Republican activist and a Maoist third worldist with ties to the IRA, who goes to pubs and talks with other Celtic freedom fighters. Luke, who himself is an ally to the queer and trans community, would not be the successor of the Maoist Rebel News Network if he thought for a minute that Jason wasn't sincere in his commitment to all forms of proletarian struggle, which includes the struggle for queer and trans liberation. It always does. Once again, intersectionality only goes so far. Dialecticalism actually tells you, lays it out on how we can achieve said revolution. Because under this liberal intersectionality, you can only get so far in what we can achieve under capitalism. Ultimately, intersectionality kind of is an ideology doomed to failure because it doesn't actually achieve anything. Dialectics does. And that's not transphobic and homophobic to say. Sorry. It's just far superior. Because, in fact, the only reason it is far superior is the fact that, well, it actually stands for something and not a bunch of performative horseshit. So yeah, I dare these people to challenge and criticize Dr. Abraham Weisfeld, who is the descendant of Holocaust victims and is the chairman of the revolution for both the Jewish Socialist Bund and the Jewish International Bund. Dr. Weisfeld has the utmost respect for Jason, and he has worked with him on numerous occasions. I don't think that he would do so if he thought that Jason was racist or insincere about his commitments to revolutionary struggle for all races, genders, and sexualities. I dare these people to challenge and criticize Steve Struggle, a black activist who is still active with the Black Panther movement and is considered the Black Panther godfather of the anti-Americanist Rainbow Coalition. I don't think Steve would ever associate with Jason if he believed these baseless accusations of racism or homophobia or transphobia. I dare people to challenge and criticize ComradeNet, a practicing Jew and cleric of public relations of the Jewish Bundist diaspora movement, who has for decades been engaging in activism under his belt with the Black, Indigenous, homeless, and various activist communities, including demarchists and anarchists. I dare them to challenge and criticize his own son, Corvid, an anarcho-Bundist who is a trans man himself. I doubt these two would ever be associated with Jason if they ever believed that Jason was the transphobic, racist, and homophobic person that these LARPy anarcho-Pakistans claim he is. So once again, I dare these people. I dare Zoe Anarcho-Pack Baker, the lefty faker, to release this so-called evidence of Jason Unruhe being a racist, a homophobe, or a transphobe. Come on, Zoe. Let me see that evidence, or you and your stands can shut the fuck up once and for all. Why don't you actually put your fucking money where your mouth is? I dare them to challenge Black and Indigenous people of color, Jewish diaspora, Black Panthers, trans and queer people, people who are true comrades, real leftists, people who put their actions to work and not just hide behind some screen. I dare them to challenge us over our support for Jason Unruhe, because I can guarantee you that they don't have shit. They don't have anything substantial to prove their baseless claims. But by all means, go ahead and challenge and criticize us. Prove us wrong. Because I can almost guarantee, with almost absolute certainty, it will not end well for them. I find it interesting that most of these people making these false allegations against Jason Unruhe are largely white first worldists who call themselves leftists, but are nothing more than a bunch of liberals on a LARP. These people who know nothing about him, whereas the people I described above do. I can say this with my entire HRT-induced chest that Jason is and will always be a lifelong friend of mine, a comrade, a mentor, and an ally. He is a friend and comrade to all trans people, to all queer people, to all Jewish people, to all Black and Indigenous people, to the Palestinian people, the Irish, the Scottish, and other Celtic peoples. He is not a man of hate. He is not a man of bigotry. Jason Unruhe is not a transphobe. I'm RedPagan Nicole for the RedPagan Network, signing off. Until next time. Thank you for watching. If you like news and politics from a leftist perspective, true crime, or informational videos on leftist philosophy and pagan belief practices, and would like to support the channel, please head over to my Patreon page and set up a monthly donation. Even a few bucks really helps me out. All links are provided in the description. Like, comment, and subscribe, and share on various social media. Hit the notification bell so that you never miss a video. I put out content regularly, so you will always get quite a bang for your buck.